Well, hello, friends, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast in my conversation with Jay Dacey. Jay Dacey is a terrific mortgage professional, loan originator of 25 years, mortgage broker, owns his own mortgage brokerage shop in the Minneapolis, Minnesota area. And I've known Jay for about 6 years now. And Jay is a man of few words. He's not flashy, but he is a technician. And what you should expect to learn in this episode are several things that you could directly and quickly implement into your business that will have a significant impact on your growth as a mortgage professional. Jay is an originator who has funded as many as 300 loans in a year, or actually a little bit more than that. And last year, which I think is even more noteworthy, in the calendar year of 2024, he funded 144 loans, which is some really solid business in a market that has been challenging for many. We're going to talk today about his strategy for nurturing his existing client database and how he gets most of his business from that. We're going to talk about the importance of having a great team and how he trains those team members and how he hires people that have never had any mortgage industry experience and grooms them into being extremely valuable. We're going to talk also about cultivating relationships with realtors and financial advisors and how to obtain reviews and leverage those reviews at point of sale. I would imagine that you're going to take a lot of notes in listening to this episode. So I would make sure that you're not driving, or if you are driving, go back and listen to it again and really take down some of the key takeaways. Before we get to this conversation, I want to say thank you for being a subscriber to this show. If you're not a subscriber, please subscribe. That's how we get great guests like Jay Dacey on the show. And give us a like if you like this on your favorite podcast channel, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. Forward it on to a colleague. Somebody else could benefit from it. And as always, we want to thank our two sponsors, Leadership 360, which is my one-year coaching program that I've been running for 13 years with my colleagues, Julie Wykes and Scott Bertone. We are accepting applications into Leadership 360 right now for the 13th year. We only take 12 clients annually. This is the only private coaching that I do. And if you really want to have an extraordinary year of growth on a business and personal level, you should explore the possibilities of being involved in the Leadership 360 group. You can click on the link in the show notes and learn more and complete an application and enter into the interview process. And we'd be happy to get to know you. I personally would love to have a chance to talk with you and see what the possibilities are. Additionally, our other sponsor is the Loan Atlas, which I'm sure you've heard a lot about. Jay Dacey is a faculty member of the Loan Atlas. The Loan Atlas is a coaching platform, a virtual coaching platform with 19 of the most giving and talented teachers/coaches that the industry has ever assembled. In the show notes, you can click on a link to learn more about the Loan Atlas. Now, without further ado, friends, let's go to my conversation with my buddy, Jay Dacey. What's up, Jay?
Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. How's Minnesota right now? Cold?
It's looking like Seattle out the window right now. It's a little bit dreary. We're expecting another snowstorm tonight, but overall, we've had a pretty mild winter, and I think the snow's pretty much all gone for now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with your business, weather is an important component. I mean, there's a lot of seasonality associated with the business cycle for you, isn't there?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, our goal as a company is to try and just get through the first quarter, break even, not lose too much money in this environment. When rates are better, obviously we have, profitability in the first quarter, but the first quarter is just always just get through it. And then the market really picks up Q2. The purchase season is just bonkers. And this year it's actually starting a little bit earlier because I think people kind of know, like, if you're going to be offering in a house in April or May, there's going to be 30 or 40 offers on one property. Right now in early March, there's maybe 5 or 6 offers. So we're seeing the market shift to a little bit earlier cycle this year.
People are getting smarter. They're realizing from past history that if they wait until that window, that they're going to be in a competitive environment. And if they can get out in front of it, maybe they'll be able to get something at a more reasonable price.
Yeah. And again, in like 25 years of doing this, it's when you can see the grass, that's essentially what starts the spring market. And people look out their window and it's like, oh, the snow's gone. We should probably look at buying a house this year.
And then how long does that last for? Until like the fall?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. So it gets super busy throughout the end of June. And then in Minnesota, a lot of people have second homes, like on lake homes, a couple hours outside of the Twin Cities. So around the week of the 4th of July, it slows down drastically because people just kind of check out, take the week off of work, go vacation, go fishing with their kids, hang out, bonfires, etc. And then after the 4th of July is over, there's a bit of a rush, especially for families with children that are trying to get into a specific school district before the school year starts. So there's a big rush through like end of August, and it's slows down steadily, and then it kind of like really cools off like around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, and then it picks back up like right around right now.
I don't want to dive into this in this exact moment, but I just made a note that I want to circle back to the subject matter of investing a little bit
Mm-hmm.
because, I mean, it is a topic that, we talk about actively in the investment thread and Leadership 360, and you're pretty active in there, and
Yeah.
you've been a good astute planner of your finances, and it kind of occurred to me that because of the cyclical nature of the business in Minnesota, that it has forced you in some ways to kind of plan for the future consistently rather than just kind of assuming things and being lazy, which is, of course, on a more macro scale, something that we all need to be doing in the mortgage origination business due to the cyclical nature of it on a year to year basis. So we'll circle back to that. I made a note of it, but
Okay.
I want to get to, you mentioned you've been in the business 25 years. And I want everybody to get a little bit of an orientation to, who you are as a mortgage professional. I mean, you're a mortgage broker, but you also have some many correspondent lines, if I'm not mistaken. And then tell us a little bit about like, what was your best year? And then what did you do in perspective in 2024 in terms of units and volume?
Yeah. So last year I personally closed just over $45 million for about 140 units. Best year was 2020. We were like $99.8 million, so just shy of $100 million in 2020. And that was probably somewhere around 300 units.
And one of the things that, I mean, there's obviously because of our longstanding relationship, I know some things that you do really well, and I want to get into those things. But before we do, like I first of all want to say congratulations on 144 units last year. I mean, that's a great year in 2024, and just kind of shows that you've truly built a business to where even in the most difficult of years, there's still business to be had, and you can kind of keep your team fed and keep yourself fed. So when in the Loan Atlas, there was a terrific conversation between you and Craig Strent, where
Yeah.
where he interviewed you on like where you got your last 10 deals. And I mean, I watched that and I was like, wow, the structure of this conversation is really wonderful. And for those of you that are Loan Atlas members that have not watched this conversation between Craig and Jay, you should. It is chock full of great suggestions and examples of how Jay goes about getting his business. And one of the things that I'd like you to focus on a little bit here is, you did, you know, roughly 300 loans and $100 million in production in 2020. And, last year you did 12 loans a month. And where do you get your business from? I mean, if you can kind of go back to the beginning, what are some of the things that you think that you have put into place over the course of your career that has allowed for you to have this stable foundation to where you can still do, a good amount of business even in the lean years?
Yeah, so about a decade ago, I made the conscious decision to put together my past client database. It actually started with my wife and I's Christmas card list, just because I didn't have a database put together at the time. So, shame on me for that, waiting that long to develop that. But I started doing a monthly mailer consistently every month, and it's been about a decade now. And over the years, we found that about 1% of your database is going to be in a position to need a mortgage this month. So if you have 100 past clients, one of them this month, one of them next month, every month, about one of them is going to need a mortgage. So if you scale your business up to, say, 950,000 clients, you should be almost guaranteed 10 loans a month based on the math. So that math has been pretty consistent. Obviously, in 2020, 2021, it was like 5 or 6%. So if I sent out 500 mailers, which was my database about the time, I'd get 25 loans the next month from the monthly mailer. That was pretty consistent. It's been a little bit slower. In 2023, it dropped probably like 0.8% instead of 1%. But last year, we picked back up to that 1% average. So that's kind of the foundation of my business, where I'm able to, as you alluded to earlier, like save up money to weather, the rough times. But I know that if I send out, 1,000 mailers this month, we should have 10 loans coming in like clockwork over time. Obviously, as we mentioned earlier in the conversation, it's not going to be 10 in January and 10 in July. It might be 5 in January and 15 in July, but the math is pretty consistent over the course of the year. That's been the biggest thing that I've done.
I'm so glad that I asked this question and that you went there because, as I think you know, this is definitely one of my favorite topics to talk about. And I want to kind of debunk some myths here that people think that the industry has changed and technology has taken over and the competition is fierce and that, there just isn't the loyalty, quote unquote, from your past clients. And I'm going to call bullshit on that. I mean, I still think that this is a relationship business and people do business with people they like to, people do business with people that they trust. And you're talking about your annuity income here. And I'm so glad that you have the mathematical statistics on it as well. And you're absolutely right that it's not like every single month you're going to get the 1%. It's going to average out to the 1%.
Yep.
And that, that is the foundation of your business. And there are far too many originators who have a decent sized database, 300, 400, 500 people, but they're not really doing anything proactively with it. So let's talk about the monthly mailer. Number one, how much does it cost you every month? What's the mechanism for you sending it out? And tell us in some detail as to what it entails. Like, what is it, a one pager? What's the content? Who writes it, et cetera?
Yeah, so I generally will have like a Word document opened up on my second monitor. And throughout the month, if I encounter a unique situation where we were like the Superman for somebody who got denied somewhere else or were able to structure a file that somebody else couldn't, I'll just make a note of that in a Word document. If I come across an interesting statistic in, MBS Highways daily updates, if there's something that really stands out about credit card debt or auto delinquencies, I'll just make a note in the Word document. And if I read a book with a really inspiring quote, or if, I'm listening to one of your meditations and something just really hits me, I'll make a note of that. So I've got usually 5 or 6 pieces on a Word document as which to kind of frame up the letter. And then what I do is I try and write it to Tim, or I try and write it to my sister, Michelle. Like I try and write it to one person when I'm typing it up. And I find like that when people receive it and read it, it's like, oh, Jay's writing to me specifically, not Jay's sending this out as a mass mailer to 1,000 people. So that's important that you actually think about like the conversation going on in the client's head. Maybe they're, at the 2.99% 30-year fixed rate I got them 4 years ago, but they just had twins. Now they've got 4 kids in a 3-bedroom house. And I might allude to, talking about helping people move up, might allude to a specific product, like the knock home equity offer where we're able to help people get a bridge loan with a cash offer in their current house. So I'll just tie in a little bit of work, but it's primarily the content is, what I'm up to, what my family's doing, if we went for vacation, if my kids played in a basketball tournament, something like that. So it's a very personal conversation for the content. It's one page. We do everything in-house. So my team will print off, again, it's the database right now is about 1,000 people. So they'll print off the 1,000 envelopes. I'll run to Costco at some point and grab a bunch of stamps. They'll put the stamps on, and then I'll just go to my Word document for, usually takes me an hour or two, and I'll try and type up something that I feel like will resonate with land with people. And then we mail it out. There's real important piece is that there's a call to action. And what I've learned a long time ago is like, I can't control when people are getting married, when they're getting divorced, when that kid arrives, when they got their promotion with a raise. Like I don't have control over that, but what I have control over is being top of mind when those life events happened. So there's no direct call to action really in terms of like, call me if you want to buy another house, because I don't control that. But the hook is I have a quote, and then I'll do a PS. Hey, text me who this quote can be attributed to for a chance to enter into a drawing for a $100 gift card to a local restaurant. And I've got a couple of friends that own restaurants. I always try and give the gift cards out to a restaurant that I've got a connection to. And then everybody else gets a $5 gift card to Starbucks. So on any given month, we'll get 15 to 40 text messages with, oh, that was a Warren Buffett quote, or that was a, Ray Kroc quote. So I'll get a bunch of text messages flooding in on a Saturday morning. And all of a sudden, like I have 15 to 40 reasons to reconnect with people that might not need a mortgage right now, but might have somebody that is a coworker or a family member that's graduating college this spring. And it's very personal. So like there's a guy and he lives like 45 minutes west of me, and he's really into like smoking briskets and like doing that sort of stuff on the green egg. So he'll be texting me at 6 a.m. a picture of his egg smoking with like a chicken on it or with a, pork shoulder on it. So there's stuff like that you just, it's organic and it just happens. And then it really just cements the relationship. Cost wise, it's about $1 per piece when you factor in the printing, the envelope, and the postage.
So it costs you $1,000 a month,
Yep.
$12,000 a year. I think you said earlier that you're on average picking up about 1% of your database on a monthly basis that needs a loan. So what I'm hearing you say is that there's, if I'm doing the math correctly, roughly 120 loans that you're getting a year from this activity. I sure hope that you make, more than $12,000 on those 120 loans, and I know that you do. I mean, it's irrefutable math. Now, let me ask this. So, I want to stay on this topic because I think that we can deepen it. But I want to check the math. So, if you get 1%, if you got 1% in 2024, that's 120 loans. You did roughly 145 loans. So were the other 25 loans ones that you got from like referral sources, or did it not work out to being 120 in 2024?
Well, there's a little bit of duplication of math in this. So if, for example, Maya Honeywell's a realtor that works with us. If we close a transaction with her 5 years ago, they're part of my database. And if that client decides to sell, move up, and still work with her as an agent, like it's technically you could consider it an agent referral, but also a past client referral. So there's some overlap in the math, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course it makes sense. So, I mean, you know this. I don't know that the listener knows this. I mean, I used to do a quarterly newsletter religiously that I wrote. It was 4 pages. Some ways I think I like what you're doing better. I wish I would have had that idea. I mean, you're making it easier on yourself. I don't want to talk about ease of implementation here in a minute, but I did a quarterly newsletter, the Homes and Money newsletter for years and years and years, wrote it in-house, printed, team mailed it out just like you, snail mail. And, had cooking recipes in it, had a trivia question, gave away a free date night, local restaurant. Had local restaurants provide like their hot dish recipe, that we would put in there sometimes. I mean, I think it's easy. You don't have to do this with yours, of course, because it's a 1-pager, but as a 4-pager, I would be looking for, who could write some copy for this and get some exposure to my database for free in exchange for them filling some copy. So I'd have CPAs write articles, financial advisors write articles, restaurants put recipes in there, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It worked then, and it's still working now is the point that I want to make. And I want to actually ask you, what do you say to the person who says that, like snail mail's old school and it doesn't work anymore?
I guess I'd show them my tax return or my P&L.
Yeah, that would shut them up real quick. I actually think it works better now than it used to work because there's less in the mailbox these days. And it's like, so the thing that I really want to say about this is, number one is bravo for, reinvesting back into your business in a smart way. Your spend isn't incredibly high. I mean, you've got a little bit of labor associated with it. And most importantly, what I want people to take note of is the brilliance behind the way that Jay is going about writing this piece every month. He's got an idea capturing tool, which is simple as a Word document on the other screen on his computer. And as things come up during the month, he's just capturing it. So when it comes to writing it, like how long does it take you to write it when you sit down to actually write it?
At most an hour. If I get interrupted with, emails or G chats from my team members, maybe 2 hours, but for the most part, I can get it done in an hour, like pretty clean.
And I really loved what you said. I think this is an important note to take, is that you write it as if you were writing it to someone that you know. So like you like, I would imagine you put yourself in a position, I'm writing this letter to my friend or whatever, and you pick a specific person. And then that is the copy that goes out to everyone so they can really feel the intimacy behind what you're sharing with them. How important is it in your mind in this 1-pager that you send out every month for you to tell some stories about things that you've done to stimulate awareness among your past clients of some of the creativity and things that you could do to help them?
Yeah, it's important to tie something in. Again, like you can't control what's going on in the 1,000 people's lives. But if 10 of them are going through divorce, or if 15 of them have children graduating college, like we just try and tie in one story that's unique. And it's going to not resonate with everybody, but if it resonates with a small percentage, that, will hopefully stimulate things. And again, if their kids maybe a freshman in college, in 3 or 4 years from now, they're going to be graduating. So we're just trying to stay top of mind of what we can do. I'll go off script a little bit here. Like one of the first, like really difficult encounters I had from people not knowing what I did, at a buddy of mine. He was in my wedding, I was in his, and he called me and asked if I could run a free credit report for him. This is 20 years ago plus, and I said sure. He was concerned that his college roommates, he had moved out in the spring, and his college roommates had the lease through the summer. He was concerned that they didn't pay the final utility bills, and like he might have a collection on his credit report. So I pulled his credit. There was no issues, and I didn't ask, for the sale, which is my fault. But I just thought naturally he called me because he knew what I do, and he'd work with me if he found a house. And a few weeks passed, and he texts me or actually calls, this is before text. He called me on a Thursday night. It's like, hey, what are you up to tomorrow afternoon? I was like, working till whenever I get done. He's like, you want to come over for pizza and beers and help us unpack? I was like,
What an
sure.
invitation.
Yeah, sure. I can help you unpack. So I went over, unpacked, didn't say anything about it. And then, that was when rates were at 6.5%, and, 18 months later, they're at 5.5%. And he calls me up. He's like, hey, I heard rates came down from when we bought. Do you want to help us refi? I was like, sure. So this is, again, back when we print off the 1003, drive to the kitchen table, get wet signatures. And so you get to page 2, list liabilities. I was like, can I just ask you a question, Tim? Like, why didn't you call your guy at US Bank? And he gave me this dumb look. He's like, well, why wouldn't I refi when it's with you? And I was like, just so you know, like I can also do purchases. So in his head, I only did refinances. Like that's the story that he had heard me tell before. So it's important when you're talking with people to not pigeonhole yourself into just being like the guy that does refis or just the guy that does 2 or 3K loans. You've got to let people know like you can handle multiple things throughout your business, and you don't just have one product that you offer.
Yeah, let me cement that as well with a similar story. I remember you probably heard me tell this before, sitting at my desk one day and the phone rings, and it's a past client of mine, and he asked me, I said, hey, Bill, how's it going? And he's like, great. He's like, hey, do you do purchase loans? And I'm like, I almost fell out of my chair. I was like, do I do? Of course I do purchase loans. And then it occurred to me, they don't know what you do. I mean, I had only ever refied him before, so he had no idea. And that's when I included, by the way, into my newsletter, the did you know section. So like every quarter there would be a did you know we do, construction to permanent loans. Did you know that the conforming loan limit's been increased? Did you know that, we do homes in these states or loans in these states, et cetera? Yeah. I mean, you have to stimulate your database to be thinking about you when they have a need. And that's what the consistency of staying in front of them is really all about. So is there any, before we move off the topic, I'm curious, is there any one newsletter or specific subject in one of your newsletters that pops to mind that generated the most activity, that stimulated people to contact you? Anything that jumps to mind?
I forget what the image was, but I usually like do a little doodling on the side of the copy. And I drew a picture of like money going down a toilet. And I'm not an artist by any means. So it was like a ugly toilet with money going down it. And I just like, if you haven't called me to refinance yet, like this is what's happening in your financial life right now. And so that, that image, I had like at least a dozen people call. It's like, hey, I've got your voicemail. I got your text. I got your email that rates are down. And then I saw the like money going down the toilet, and like that struck a chord with me. So let's do this refi now.
That's a great story. I'm glad I asked it. So I have another topic that I want to bring up, but before I do, I want to ask you, is there anything else that you think that you do besides this one pager every month that has been instrumental in the growth of your business and the stability of your business? Anything else that you think that you'd like to share?
Yeah. So there's services that send out the monthly newsletters on our behalf. So we personally currently use HomeBot. I know there's other products and there's more products coming to market similar to that. That's our way to stay in front of them digitally in their email. And we get, a fair amount of traction from that, with people asking if the values are correct, or asking them if they can really pull cash out, because they didn't know they could do cash out on a first mortgage. They thought they could only get a HELOC. So that stimulates some activity. And then the Google reviews that we built up were roughly at like 300. We started 10 years ago on Zillow and got up to 200 or so on there. But having that social proof, it really cements things and helps. And people that take the time to read the reviews, like if you search for a restaurant or if you need a new roof, like you can tell the reviews if they're authentic and genuine based on how they're written versus, oh, that dude just reached out to his 20 best friends and said, can you please leave a review, or asked his employees to leave a review. So our reviews are like all authentic and genuine. And so if people haven't heard of us before, they'll usually just Google search anything. Before I go to a restaurant, I'm going to look it up on, Yelp or Google and just see the reviews before I go there. So I think people find us online either organically when they search for us, or if they're referred to us, they'll search for us first. And having that social proof out there, it's not me following a script selling them on why they should work with me. It's the rest of the world telling them how good our team is. And so that really helps our conversion, is because they're pretty much pre-sold after they've read the reviews.
Your good buddies with Tyler Osby. In fact,
Yeah.
I know Tyler Osby because of you. You were kind enough to refer him into the Leadership 360 Signature Program, 4 years ago now. And Tyler is a terrific teacher, and his master class in the Loan Atlas on reviews is absolutely terrific. I don't think I know of anyone who leverages reviews quite as effectively as he does. And I think that you have a real good finger on the pulse of the things that he does. But for the sake, since he's not here, let's talk about how you handle reviews. So how do you get people to give you a review? And then what do you do strategically to leverage those reviews to, cement your reputation and separate yourself from competition?
So it's part of our perfect loan process. So post closing, we on a refinance will reach out and ask them to leave a review, and then remind them that they should be expecting their escrow refund check, or remind them that they get to skip a payment. So we don't just call and ask for a review. We tie it to some good news, like you're skipping the payment, or you're going to be getting a check back for your escrow refund. And then at a purchase, it's a helpful tip. In Minnesota, if you're purchasing an owner-occupied house, you have to file what's called a homestead paperwork. So a couple days after closing, we'll call them and remind them, hey, Tim, did you go to the county and file your homestead paperwork yet? By the way, would you be so kind as to leave us a 5-star review? I'll send you the link. It'll take you a minute to do. And the more thought you put into it, the more we appreciate it. So it's part of our process.
Sorry to interrupt, but you ask for a 5-star review. I just want to make sure that that's the way you say it.
Yeah, we don't ask for a review. We ask for a 5-star review.
And say more about that. There's obviously a reason. Why is it that you say it in that way? Have you found that if you say it that way, that you get people won't give you a review if they're not going to give you 5-star, I'm assuming, or?
No, I feel like it's earned. Like the job that we do, like we don't offer 4-star service. It's 5-star service. So like we're just implying like you had a 5-star experience, and we've never not had a 5-star review. It's everybody just left a 5-star review. So I don't know if that's because I'm asking them to leave me a 5-star review, or if it's because they experienced the service that we delivered in the manner that I expect them to receive it.
Well, I don't think it hurts. I mean,
Yeah, for sure.
You're not leaving a lot of opening for them to give you anything other than 5 stars. So I think that's really smart. Now, what do you do, if anything, at like point of sale to drive people to your reviews so they can see that there's a lot of social endorsement out there?
I think most people naturally do it on their own. Where I leverage it more so is with a listing agent. So if you're going to write an offer on a house today, I'll look up the listing agent, see who it is. If we've done a transaction with them before, it'll be in our CRM. And so I can make that call. And if they're in our CRM, I can say, hey, Tim, it's Jay. We worked together. You had a listing in 2018 that sold on 7th Street in Crystal, Minnesota. I'm not sure if you remember that one or not, but I do. It was a great experience, and we closed on time. So we'll let them know that we worked together in the past. If we haven't worked together in the past, we'll look up and see which agents in their office we might have worked with as well, and just say, hey, Tim, we haven't had the opportunity to work together yet, but if you need a reference for us, you can either search us online or talk to Julie. She just worked with a buyer that we helped get into a new home in Robbinsdale. So we're just like letting them know like we're out there, because if I don't make that proactive call, I feel like I kind of sound like a dink when they call me. It's like, I've never heard of you before. And I don't want to sound condescending and be like, well, did you search us online? Because you'll see we have great reviews. Like, you should have already done your homework on me, just like I did my homework on you. But it sounds kind of condescending if you ask them, like, why didn't you look me up online beforehand? So we're proactively letting them know, like, we haven't worked together yet, but if you look us up online, you can find out more about us.
I really love that. There's a lot of, one of the things that I love about talking to you about your profession is that you do all the little things really well. And it's all these little things that matter and that add up to big things. There are a lot of originators out there who will, in a very passive way, ask for a review. They won't ask for a 5-star review. And then they get the reviews and they have a sporadic number of them, maybe, a couple of dozen, and they range from 3 to 5. And then they don't do anything with the reviews to proactively separate themselves from competition like you and Tyler do. So it's these little things that I hope everyone that's listening are taking note of. Is like, if you're going to gather the reviews, make sure that you're then putting them in front of people. I mean, if I've got 300 5-star reviews, I'm not taking a chance on any loan that I do that somebody is looking at them. I'm building that into my scripting and into my presentation where I'm driving them to those reviews. So if they are shopping me or they are considering someone else that is providing, say, a similar rate to me, that I've created a separating factor. Because I don't know about you, but as a consumer, if I go look at Jay's reviews and he has 300 5-star reviews and I'm talking to somebody else who has a similar rate, but they only have 12, I'm going to go with Jay. I mean, there's the social proof there that really helps. And I like the fact that you're not being, passive about it. One of the things that I want to also highlight that I remember at the Leadership 360 Masters Retreat in Northern California I guess it was like 3 or 4 years ago, it was during COVID.
Yeah.
I interviewed you on something that you were doing with your team as it related to training. And it was a brilliant idea that I was like, wow, this, I've never heard anybody doing this. This is fantastic. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to share about that. I think you know what I'm talking about, but also just tell us a little bit about your team. Like, how many people do you have on your team that helped you fund these 144 loans last year?
Yeah. So last year we had a processor and a transaction coordinator that were full-time. And then I've got a part-time operations manager. She went on maternity leave last summer and decided to go back to like 10 hours a week versus full-time. And then I have a super part-time post-closer that helps get the loans that we fund off of our warehouse line and purchase and does all the reconciliation for accounting. So we added a new processor / transaction coordinator in January in expectations of business ramping up this year. So currently it's myself, another LO, 3 full-time production people, and then 2 part-time operations and post-closing.
So before we go into how you train them, which is the part that I want you to share some detail on, what I just heard you say is that you're anticipating an increase in production. Give us a little bit of a feeling about that. I mean, I know you're not Dan or Barry Habib, but you do follow the financial markets very closely, and you know both those guys. So here we are recording this in early March of 2025, and this episode will air here in just a few weeks, so it'll be particularly timely. What are you seeing and thinking is going to happen with interest rates for the remainder of this year if you had a crystal ball?
So people with crystal balls tend to have glass shatterings around them at some point. So I'll give you the answer to that question, but from a macro perspective, I think some of the numbers that Barry and Dan have shared is that about 10% of the LOs did not renew last year. And Fannie Mae has forecasted, I believe, a 10% increase in volume. So by default, our business should go up, roughly 20%, just because there's a little bit less competition and a little bit more volume. And every year, as long as homes appreciate, there's a little bit more transaction size in each transaction. If the loan size goes from 310 to 315, that's a 5% growth. It's not more units, but it's a growth in volume. So I feel like the 2 drivers of rates obviously are inflation and unemployment. Inflation's, somewhere in that 2.5–3% range. I don't know if it's going to go up or down much either way. There's fears about the tariffs, which I think aren't, super high risk in my opinion. But I am, I don't want to say I'm optimistic about unemployment going up because it sounds bad, but if unemployment goes up, that would be a great boon to the interest rates coming down. And that's kind of what we're basing our hiring and staffing decisions on, is that we'll see unemployment tick up a little bit and rates come down. And they don't have to come down all that much for us to be able to capture some refi opportunities. And also the move up buyers, it's, people that got 3% 4 years ago, they know rates are at roughly 7% today. And it's not like they're waiting for them to go back down. It's just the new normal. So if there is a dip into the upper fives, like I quoted somebody 5.75 on a 15-year that was paying 6.99 on a 30-year. So I think with their whether they're on, Wall Street Journal or Bankrate or wherever you go, and like somebody's advertising 5% on a 15-year, that's going to stimulate them to make the call to me to see where rates are actually at and if that move up by makes sense. So we're super bullish on this year for the overall market for those reasons.
Yeah, I don't want to skip over something you just said there. I think I'm a pretty good listener, and you just said something really important, which is they go on to Bankrate and they see an interest rate advertised of 5%, and then they call you to check where rates are at. I just want to call everyone's attention to the fact that, notice he didn't say that then they go apply with Bankrate. They call him. Well, why do they call him? Well, because they hear from him every month. And he's developed a great reputation with them with 300 five-star reviews. I mean, this business isn't as complicated as a lot of people make it. And the thing that I really love about talking with you is that, yes, you do a lot of things really well, but they're not like the flashy things, it's not like you have 70,000 followers on your social media page, or that you're going out and doing all these lunch and learns and big presentations for realtors and have all this slick stuff. You're blocking and tackling. You're staying in touch with the relationships that you have. You're nurturing and deepening the relationships that you have. You're getting their testimonials and putting them out there. And when rates do drop, they're going to check Bankrate, but they're going to come back and they're going to call you because you're the one that they have a relationship with. And I just want to make sure that everybody's taking note of that. So let's go back to your team. How do you train them? Share with us this brilliant strategy.
Yeah. So with only one exception, I generally will hire people with no mortgage industry experience because I have in the past hired people that worked at, Wells Fargo or bigger banks. And like, it just drove me nuts having somebody sit next to me and say, well, at Wells Fargo, we did it this way. And it's like, well, Wells Fargo laid you off 3 weeks ago. Like, I don't care how they did it over here. This is how we do it. So that, like, having those early hires not work out that had experience before led me to believe like it's better to take somebody with no experience that has like high intelligence and high S&C is what we look for in terms of the DISC profile. And then so they just sit next to me for the first few days, and there's I might butcher this a little bit. There's like 4 stages of learning. So if you're going to try and do something brand new that you've never done before, like, you don't know what you don't know. So when I hire, a 22-year-old graduate, they come in, they might know what a mortgage is, but probably not much about it. They don't know what DTI, LTV, APR, like they don't know anything. And so that first couple days, couple weeks with me is like them learning what they don't know. And like, okay, so what's LTV, what's DTI? So that takes a couple days. And what I do is I work for about 50 to 55 minutes per hour. And I say, just do not interrupt me, Tim. Take notes. They've got a white pad. If you have any questions, just write it down. I'm going to walk through everything I'm doing. So our LOS, our POS, like our Salesforce, like I'm explaining to them everything and how it ties together. And I let them know, like, you're probably going to go home today and cry because this seems super, super, super complicated. And I promise you that in 3 or 4 weeks from now, it's not going to be all that complicated, but it's going to feel like that, like very much so. So don't be frustrated. Just know, like, this is the experience you're going to have. And after a few days, they start to know, like, okay, now I know what I don't know, as opposed to they don't know what they don't know. So now they're asking questions like, so, okay, I've heard you say LTV 6 times. Like, what exactly is that? So then I'll show them a calculation and have them do a couple of calculations. And so I show them what LTV is and how it's derived, and same with DTI and all the lingo that we have. So then they, after like a couple of weeks, they start knowing some things, and then they kind of know what they know after a few weeks. And so what we do training wise is we record everything that we do, whether that's pulling a credit report, updating a credit report, sending out a closing package, like everything that we do is in a Drive folder with a Word document typed out, like step by step, every single thing that you do. And also that person doing that activity has a recording of how that, how logging into this website and clicking on this spot and this lock to lock a loan, like everything is recorded with what they could do. So when they move into the actual role that they're for, they'll have shadowed with that person. So after, I get them through the first couple of weeks, they'll then shadow with another team member and learn that role. And then they'll like get out of the chair and they'll sit in the driver's seat, and the person that has that role will like sit alongside them and just guide them through it and say, hey, if I'm out to lunch or if I'm on vacation and you can't figure this out, there's this how-to video here. So it's under the processing tab or it's under the transaction coordinator tab. So every step of everything that we do is recorded with a how-to written out. So some people are better visual people, other people are better readers. So we have both options.
So just to recap, they're shadowing with you for 2 weeks. They're taking notes without interrupting you. You have a process of debriefing with them where they're given the opportunity to ask questions and for you to deepen the things that they need to know on a foundational level so they have an awareness of, first and foremost, what they don't know so they can ask. And then secondly is then they learn. Then they sit in the seat of a transaction coordinator or a processor, and they spend time shadowing them, watching them do their job. But those things are also those steps in the process of a transaction coordinator or a processor's job are being recorded, and they're in a library, both in written and visual form. Do you use AI as an example? Like I was visualizing when you were saying this, like let's say that I'm a processor and I'm showing, a prospective new processor how to work up debt to income ratios and how to read tax returns, and I'm doing it in a visual format and it's being recorded. Do you then give that to AI and then the AI transcribes it and puts it into a written document? Are you doing it that way?
Nope, we haven't used that yet.
That's a suggestion that I have for you. I think that it would work really well. I mean, you could just dump that thing in AI and say, rewrite, transcribe this and write it in a user manual type format. And I'm pretty sure that chat or some similar AI mechanism could do that for you. Wow, that's so smart, right? Because I think that so first of all, I want to call out that I get asked this question and have been for years and years. Your buddy, Mike Trejo, I know you can't bring up his name without you laughing. Your buddy, Mike Trejo, like I remember him asking me in a coaching session many years ago, my opinion on, do I hire somebody with experience or do I hire somebody without experience? And I think that the inherent intuition from a lot of people is to hire someone without experience and to train them to your way of doing business. But what holds them back from doing that is they don't have a mechanism for training. And it's just a daunting task. It's like, shit, like for me to get somebody up to speed in the course of 90 days is going to be like me putting my business on hold and having to hold their hand. But what you've done is you've created an easy to use platform that helps people get up to speed and affords you the ability to hire people that don't have experience, don't have bad habits to break, and probably, I would imagine, cost less money. Is that accurate?
Yeah, very.
I mean, and it's also noble, right? Like, I mean, you could take a 22, Sarah Holmesy on my team. I mean, Sarah's first job was when she was 22 years old out of college. She came to work for me, and here she is 7 years later, and she's still working for me, and she's just irreplaceable. I mean, she's so valuable, but she didn't know anything when she first started. But I was able to give somebody an opportunity for a career, which is a really noble thing to be able to do. And I'm sure you feel the same way.
Yeah, very much so. And one thing I forgot to mention that's important is, if Trejo called me and said, "Hey, how long do you train this person before you hand them off to your processor?" The answer is when they stop asking questions.
Yes.
So I said, you work for 55 minutes, write down your questions. So at some point in time, they no longer have questions after that hour-long session. Okay, you're done here. Move on to the processor, move on to the transaction coordinator. So I wanted to add that because a lot of people ask, how long do you train them for? Until they're ready.
Such a great footnote. And yes, that's exactly how I did it when I had loan originators shadow me to become production partners, was that you just will know after a while to when the questions just stop. The debriefs are super short. Okay, we've got it all covered. And you know what I used to also do, if I'll add this in. So if I have a potential production partner, a junior LO or an LOA or whatever you want to call it, there comes this point in time, and you kind of alluded to it with the processing position, but there will come a point in time in the process to where, okay, they'll sit in with me on a consult with a prospective client and they'll listen and we'll debrief and they'll ask me questions. Why did you say this? And what's a 2-1 buy down? And how does that work? And blah, blah, blah. But when those questions start to dwindle down, now I also know that it's time for me to let them consult with the client and I sit there. And for some people, it's like, oh, well, that's scary because now you're putting your paycheck in the hands of someone else. No, it's not scary at all. I'm not telling you to leave the room. You just simply introduce the person as this is my apprentice that's in training with me. He or she is near the end of their training. They're super skilled. They've been shadowing me for several weeks. And I'm going to let them consult with you, but I'm going to be sitting right here the whole time. And if there's anything that I want to add to make sure that you are fully well versed on the financial decisions that you're about to make, know that I'll be here and chiming in and playing color commentator. I've never had a borrower say, no, I'm not okay with that. I only want you. They're fine with it. They actually admire the fact that you're grooming somebody to have a career for themselves. And then you let them do some consults and you watch them. And when you stop having feedback for them, now all of a sudden you know that they're ready. And by the way, like everybody, for everybody to take note of, how valuable would your team be if they were all cross-trained in each other's jobs? How valuable would it be if you had a clone of you, a mini you, if you will, to where then you could step out of your business for 10 days and go on vacation with your family. You don't have to check in because you know you have somebody who's well-trained back at the office handling things on your behalf. So let's talk about referral partners. Do you have any? How many do you have? How did you go about obtaining them? What's your strategy for cultivating relationships with people that can refer business to you?
Yeah, so we have a handful of agents that we work with. They're doing probably on average 25 to 30 transactions per year, half purchase, half. I'm not sorry, half purchase, half buy side, half sell side. So we don't have a specific whale that we're reliant on that's doing 80 transactions a year that's asking us for $2,000 a month for Zillow or MSSAs. Like that's not what we're interested in doing. So we tend to stick with agents that we like, that we've had transactions with, that we know are going to be loyal to us. And in turn, we'll, with our database, we're able to refer out some business to them as well. So it's kind of a reciprocal relationship, and they're geographically spread out. So that the Twin Cities is a fairly flat market. And so like we might have a call from a client that's 30 miles north of us and a call from somebody the same day that's 30 miles west and 30 miles south and 20 minutes east. So because of the geographic like diversity, we're able to refer people to those agents that are in those specific areas, and just give that, one agent's name. If you're looking in this, specific county or school district, this is your person. So that's spread out that way. We've found that our best referral source is financial planners. And the mindset of a referral from a realtor is that we're the necessary evil that they need to deal with to get into this house. The avatar is a married couple and they just went to an open house. They're not pre-approved. We talked to them Friday. It's now Sunday at 6 p.m. and highest and best are due by 8 o'clock at night. And if I'm coaching my kids' basketball team and I get a call at 6 and another call at 6:05, and then, I'm not available at 6 p.m. on a Sunday, which is a high probability. We're like this necessary evil that's not available. And we're like a roadblock to them getting the house. If in turn it's a financial planner, the financial planner is having conversations Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, working regular business hours. And when their clients say, we want to retire by 60, we want to put our kids through college, we want to have a second home in Scottsdale, Arizona, then the financial planner says, well, you need to call Jay. Now it's like we're no longer a necessary evil. We're a part of their plan that's going to get their kids through college, get them that second house on the golf course in Scottsdale. Like we're a part of the team as opposed to like this guy that they can't track down on a weekend. So we don't really focus too much on agents. Like, we don't call 40 agents every Monday. We're looking for agents during transactions that have, a fair amount of volume that we enjoyed working with, that treated my team with respect. And if they check all those boxes, then I might reach out for them to have coffee, but we're not super proactive with reaching out for realtors.
How do you go about cultivating relationships with financial advisors? What has been your approach historically that's been successful?
Yeah, the best referral source that I have, he actually bought a home probably 15 years ago. And the financial planners are often very aggressive on their tax returns and try not to show a ton of income. And so he was able to purchase a house, and I sent the closing statement to his CPA for tax purposes. And the CPA just called him and just said, like, I do a lot of your guys' returns, and this should be your guy. Like the fact that he was able to read your tax returns and add back the $48,000 of, auto expense from mileage, et cetera. Like this is just who you need to work with. So it was actually the best financial planner I have. His CPA saw that we got their loan approved and just said like, you don't need to talk to another mortgage lender. Like this is your guy to use. And that's like 15 years ago. And he's still sitting his business to this day. And some of his partners at his firm are now referring his business to over time.
I feel like I could talk to you for like 3 hours. There's a bunch of questions that I have. I mean, you just hit on something else that's a super important piece to it. And I know this about you as well, because in the WhatsApp threads and Leadership 360, I see that you're active and people are posting questions about, what lender can do this 100% second, or, what lender does, reverse mortgages, or, manufactured homes. And you're always in there chiming in. You have great product knowledge. So speak to the importance of product knowledge and deal structuring knowledge. And I want you to put yourself into the shoes of a new originator or somebody who's maybe just been in the business 3 or 4 years that might not possess those same skills that you do. How did you go about learning and becoming wise to where, it's like I've always said that your product and your deal structuring knowledge is the key that unlocks the door to relationships. I mean, I could tell you so many stories about relationships that were so prolific in my career that had I not had the knowledge that was necessary, I would have never gotten that relationship. But because I was able to do something that somebody else couldn't do, just like in the story here of the CPA and the CFP, it opened up a gateway of future business that is significant in your career. So what would you advise originators in terms of how to get that knowledge?
I mean, this might not be the answer you're looking for, but my mentality is that I just figure things out. So I'm not going to proactively call a CFP and say, I know how to read tax returns because I, spent 40 hours on a MGIC class on how to read tax returns. But so we'll get the client come to us that has a unique situation and then just figure it out. And then that opens.
How do you go about figuring it out? Like, who figures it out? Do you pick up the phone, you call AEs, you talk to an underwriter? Like, how do you?
Yeah. We'll, open up the Fannie Mae guidelines, the FHA guidelines, the investor guidelines. It's a lot easier today than it was when I started. Now you can just go into guidelines and it's a PDF for the most part and just type in the word, divorce decree or buyout or like whatever the unique situation is, and it'll take you right to the answer. But just a lot of loan officers I don't know if they're lazy or they're just not wanting to look bad, but they're not willing to just do some homework and figure it out. And then we'll clarify with our AEs, like, this is the scenario. Does this make sense? If it's a purchase, we'll send it in as a TBD underwrite and make sure that there's certainty that the file is going to get to the closing table on time.
Did you listen to the podcast episode with John Wade?
I did not know.
You should go listen to it. It's really great. And one of the things that John does, and I'm curious if you do anything that's similar to this, is that John's super playful. I mean, he's got a personality that, like, he's bold and he's a little edgy, but he's fun, and like nobody takes him too seriously with his boldness and edginess. But he'll call like a real estate agent up. Like, let's just hypothetically say that, you get a tough deal and the borrower is not going to fit in most people's box, but you're able to structure the deal in a way to get the deal done. He'll call that agent up and he'll be like, do you have any idea how lucky you are to work with me? Like, do you have any idea, like, how much money you're going to make this month that you wouldn't have made if it wasn't for me? Let me tell you about this deal that we're working on. And he won't get into the granular details of the deal because, of course, his fiduciary responsibility to the client, but he will make sure that they know when it's a tough deal. And I think that's something that's very noteworthy. I think that's an opportunity that is often missed by loan originators. They come in, they're the hero, they actually get something done, they clean up somebody's credit, they get their credit score raised, they figure out a way to get income that somebody else wasn't seeing. They have an obscure loan program, or they know how to sell a non-QM loan that other loan originators could never sell that higher rate. And they bumble the opportunity to make sure that maybe the most important person on the transaction, the referring source, is aware of their skills that they're possessing. Is that something that you ever integrate into your scripting or in your conversations?
Just last night.
Tell us about it.
We've got a 203K loan that's closing today. And it's the first one that we've done in a while. And when the agent wrote the offer, he called and was like, hey, by the way, this is going to need, renovation financing. And one of our partners was Flagstar Bank. They're going through some transitions right now, and so they shut off that product line. So we didn't have anybody approved for renovation financing. So we got signed up with Plaza Home Mortgage like 6 weeks ago, roughly 7 weeks ago. And so I just said like, it's Friday afternoon. You want to write this offer? Like I'm going to fill out the application this weekend. By Monday or Tuesday, I should have my approval to be able to do a 2 or 3K loan. So there was all kinds of issues with the file. The foundation had issues, so they need to get a structural engineer. There was molds. They need to have like a mold remediation. So like there's all these bumps along the road. And last night he emailed me and just said, "Hey, like why is the fee so high on this? Usually your fees are much lower than that." And I just said, "Thanks for asking." Their DTI is 49.95. We needed to get under 50%. And the more cost effective way to do that was to buy down the rate sum. So a good portion of that fee is going to get the rate to where it is now versus them having to put a lot more money down at a higher rate. So like it just happened yesterday and we just like answered the question directly. That's one of the things that I'm probably known for is like I'm very direct and just give people the answers and like that's it. And it kind of intimidates some people until they figure out that that's just who I am and I don't need to talk a whole lot.
Yeah, no, I know that about you. I mean, sometimes you are a man of very few words, but the words that you choose to use are very direct and significant. So, I want to talk about investing for a moment as we kind of land this plane and bring this conversation to a close. But let's spend a little time on it. So, you have this very cyclical environment that you're in Minnesota where, you're looking to just break even in the first 3 months of the year and kind of weather the storm and then, have the good days come. But on a grander scale, and you've been in the business for a very long time now, 25 years, you've seen, shifts in markets and obviously the last 3 years, 3+ years has been difficult for a lot of people and a lot of people weren't prepared for it and didn't invest their money wisely. Now I'm not asking you to give investment advice, but I do think it would be noteworthy for you to share a little bit about your philosophies on investing. I know that a couple of years ago now, almost, you flew down to Omaha for the Berkshire Hathaway annual meeting with Mr. Warren Buffett, and that you're a student of finances. Share with us, like maybe coach some originators a little bit here on some of your philosophies on being a mortgage professional and what you need to be thinking about doing in your financial planning of your own to ensure that when times are tough, you're okay.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of go two tangents. One is, and I think it was, I read a story when I was in high school about Bill Gates starting Microsoft. And he wanted to have 1 year of expenses in the bank before he opened the doors. Like he didn't care about revenue right away. He just wanted to have at least 1 year of cushion in the bank. And so when I opened my brokerage in 2019, early 2019, I put in roughly 1 year's worth of expenses for what I was projecting and just said, okay, even if we don't close a loan this year, we'll still have our doors open. So, if you're a branch manager listening to the call, your company might ask you to have 3 months reserves or 6 months reserves. So I've always felt like having a year worth of financial reserves in the bank to get through zero revenue is a place that allows me to make whatever decision I want to make without being coming from a place of fear. When things slow down, we didn't cut people, we didn't fire people. We had a little bit of turnover, not much, but we didn't just lay off 5 people one day because we couldn't afford to or we thought we couldn't afford to. So being in the position of not having to make decisions out of fear is like, it helps me sleep at night. It helps me come into the office and look at my team members saying, don't worry if rates don't come down this week or next quarter, like we're going to be fine. So having the financial reserves inside of the business just gives me peace of mind and to not operate from fear. But then once you have that cushion built up, you need to, invest in yourself. And, that's twofold. That's making those financial investments. So, buying shares of Berkshire is what my primary financial strategy is. Like 80% of my net worth is in Berkshire stock. So that's what I'm all in on. And just continuing to buy in like over time, whether like I don't try and time the market. There's a guy named Howard Marks who I read a book called The Most Important Thing. It's a great book. If you haven't read it, you should buy that. He said it's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. And that the people that try and time the market, those are the ones that, buy at the top and sell at the bottom. So just being consistent. So for, my wife and I, we have 401ks, IRAs, in addition to like stuff in our regular brokerage account, but like we just max out everything that we can. And then I think Josh Metal had something about like poor people spend their money and save what's left. Rich people save their money and then spend what's left. And
Yeah.
I've always had that mindset. And I've never made financial decisions that put myself at risk in terms of like, oh, I'm going to go buy this thing on credit that I can't afford, but I can make the payment. So I've always tried to be very diligent about keeping my balance sheet very heavy on the assets and very light on the liabilities.
Yeah, I remember vividly a day many, many, many years ago now where I had two different loan applications in my office. The first one was with an attorney who was on salary. My recollection is he was making about 150,000 a year, which 20 plus years ago was a nice sum of money. And he was buying a like $1.3 million home in an area called Lake Sherwood. And he was putting 10% down. And he had about $30,000 in credit card debt. And the 10% down that he was putting down was from the proceeds from the sale of his house. He didn't have a lot of money in his retirement account. He didn't have a lot of money in the bank. And I remember kind of scratching my head thinking to myself, I make way more money than this guy, and he's buying a house that's worth twice as much as my house. And I was like, this guy's stretching himself too much. Later that day, I had a school teacher come in, and she was buying, first time home buyer house, 250, 300,000, putting 20% down that she had saved. She had no credit card debt. Her credit scores through the roof. Her debt to income ratios were fine. And I remember it dawned on me in that moment. I was like, this lady who makes, $50,000 a year or whatever she was making at the time is in far better shape than this guy that I met with earlier today that's making three times as much. And that's because she was living within her means. And I think that that's what that quote from Josh Metal's talking about. It's like first defining what is my goal for savings at year end? And then the rest is left over for spending and making sure that you have a lifestyle that supports the savings goal rather than what most people do is that the savings is an afterthought. And usually there's never anything saved because they're always kind of extending the finish line and upping the ante on their lifestyle. I do want to circle back to one other question as it relates to mortgages. So we've had a pretty comprehensive conversation here as it relates to, what you're sending out to your database and how you've developed relationships with financial advisors and how you train your team and all of that. Now, if there's some wisdom that you have, some coaching that you have for those that are listening that may say, well, but I don't have a database of 1,000 people. I've only been in the business 3 years and it's been a tough 3 years. And I only done 75 loans in the last 3 years. And all the realtors out there that I'm pursuing, they're struggling and, there's tight inventory and realtors are dropping like flies and the NAR ruling is putting, a pinch on their commissions, et cetera. Like if you were in that position right now, what would you be doing to survive and to get yourself into a more gainful position?
Yeah. So this will be completely out of left field, but the thing that I always feel optimistic about is whenever I take a flight and when I'm landing into MSP Airport, I look out and I just see all the homes that are out there. There's so many homes, right? And it's like every single one of those is an opportunity. So I just need to get in front of enough people on a daily basis, monthly basis. It's like there's so many homes out there. It's not like we have this one little product that there's such a small niche for. Like we're in the housing business and everybody needs a house. So like the market is just so big. Like that's what I always, whenever I'm like in a funk and I take a flight, it's like, and I'm looking down over our city, it's like, okay, there's plenty of opportunities out there. So that's like mentally what helps me is just looking from an airplane window down over the city to see actually how many people are that we can serve. From another perspective, in terms of the, getting through the market, it's just kind of like, just do it. Like, I think back to my daughter in 2023 when things were really slow in terms of like volume and production. And she's smart. She's probably 10 at the time, maybe 9. And, nobody like socially would say to me directly, be like, what is it like being a mortgage lender? You're not, closing 40 loans anymore. You're, maybe closing 4. Is everything okay financially? Like nobody asked me that question directly, but we're at social settings and my wife would, I'd overhear people asking my wife, like, how's Jay's business? And she's like, I don't know. Like, I don't care. Like, and they're like, what do you mean? Like, you don't care about his business? Like, doesn't it impact your family? She's like, no, not really, because the highs are so high And does such a good job of like saving whatever he makes when the highs are higher. Like it doesn't matter what the lows are because like the highs are high enough to offset any lows. And then back to my daughter, like she asked me, she's like, Dad, like, why are you so busy right now? You seem really busy in terms of like doing things. And I was like, it's because, honey, I want to be busy when it gets busy. Like right now is really slow, honey. And because it's really slow, I've got to be busy. I've got to be making more phone calls than usual. I got to be, going to meet more people than usual. So that's why I'm busy right now. So that when it actually does get busy, I'll just be able to like take advantage of that at the time. She's like, oh, okay, that makes sense. So just get busy.
I I love that. So let me translate that a little bit further. So you heard me say this a million times that this is a relationship business. A loan officer with the most friends wins. It's about connections. The people that have the most connections will ultimately be successful long term in this business. Right now is a time where going out there and developing relationships is critically important. The problem that most originators have is they get into the business when it's bountiful and we buy into a story that everything is immediate gratification. And, we get in the business and we talk to like, 8 friends of ours and 6 of them want to refi with us and we start making money right away. And we think, oh, this is how it is. And that's not how it is. That's the obscure times. It's during these times that real loan originators are made. And it's during these times that the good originators are going out and gobbling up new relationships. Activity right now, as it relates to developing relationships, is key. And what will happen is when rates start to come down, you'll be like, holy shit, the phone's just starting to ring now. And I didn't realize all this was coming my way, but it was from the last 2 years, 3 years, whatever, of being active. So that's a great answer. Maybe most importantly is congratulations to your daughter on the big comeback win about a week ago in her basketball tournament. Did you like that Bobby Knight meme that I put up on the WhatsApp thread?
Yeah, every year before the start of the season, I'll send that meme to my fellow coaches, and it's like, hey, like we got a big tournament this weekend, let's go, and then send that cheer throwing image to them. And I don't know if you remember, Clem Haskins was the University of Minnesota coach in the 80s and 90s, and
Sure.
he had a thing where he'd always he wore a tie and a suit coat to every game, and there'd be at some point in the game he'd take his tie off and throw it, and then if it got really heated, he'd take his jacket off and throw that too. So those are my 2 memes I send to the coaches on my staff.
Yeah, shoot me one of those. I want to have that in my hip pocket for somebody else in the future. Jay, it was great to spend time with you today, man. Thanks so much. This was a wonderful conversation. And to everybody listening, go check out the Loan Atlas. You get access to Jay and a whole bunch of other great teachers on a much more consistent basis. Thanks so much for tuning in. And we want to wish you success as the spring months start to unfold. Take care, everyone.